Let me reset this image real quick. Boom. All right, and we're back to where we started. And we do have the ruler set to percent, so that means that this will set things to percentage. Let's take a look at a couple of the extra settings that are in here, and then we can try to fix some of the broken Photoshop actions. So first things first, if you come up here, you'll notice that we have the standard ability to create a new action or a new set. We have those under the buttons. We can duplicate, delete, and play. Also, we have those under the buttons. We have start recording, but then we have something called record again. We have something called insert menu item, insert stop, and insert conditional, along with insert path. We also have the action options, which brings up, there it is. I couldn't find this earlier. It's the same thing as double clicking, and that will allow you to do things like turn off function keys, which I recommend doing. They're not very useful unless you're doing something very specific. Then you'll usually need to get rid of it later. We have playback options, which normally you'll do accelerated, but if you want to watch each step, you can click step by step. You can also pause for a certain amount of time between each one. Accelerated's fine by me. If your computer is bugging out, you might want to slow it down so that it has more time to go through things, but that's rare these days. You can clear out the actions, which will, delete the actions. You can reset them to the defaults, load in new ones, replace actions that you have. So if you want a different action in there, notice now we've replaced all of them with this gradient map, which means now I need to go and reset actions. You can append them, which means we'll just add them on, but I'm going to replace them all with the defaults. And now I need to make a new action set. So watch out for that reset, and then I can make new actions from there. All right, let's take a look. Button mode just changes it to the button mode. I don't find this particularly useful. I usually leave that off so that we can just access it. All you have to do is click on one and play. If you have an action that has multiple steps, like vignette, you have some abilities to skip steps by unchecking it. Now, if you skip a step, then the parent, if this is a child, and by that I mean if you have to twirl it out here, it's a child, and the one on top's the parent. If you uncheck a child inside of a parent, you'll get a little alert in the form of a red checkbox, so you'll know that something's been unchecked. You have this modal button, which just means that it will stop and ask you questions at the time. So, for example, on this vignette, let's go ahead and play with this since we're eventually going to patch it up a bit. Let me just duplicate this layer real quick. Make a marquee. All right. If we check on the make snapshot, the toggle dialog on off, this is what's referred to as modal on off in the Photoshop manual, online manual. Great, go ahead and hit play. Notice now the snapshot says, hey, what do you want to call the snapshot? Delete this. Okay, and now it goes to the feather step, and we can tell it 5 is fine, and we'll go through the rest, and then it creates the rest of it. Now, that said, if we were to run this without that dialog on, notice that we have this delete this, so I'm going to delete that snapshot, come back up and reset everything. Highlight that again. Boom. Let's go ahead and run it. It skips straight to the feather radius. We tell it okay, and then it does it. All right, so that's all that does, is it stops it to bring up the dialogue. Now, we can insert our own stops, and we can say things like, for example, an insert stop, and we can leave a message, hey, so this will only can't seem to type tonight, on a selection. And if you tell it allow continue, then we'll just let it go. So now watch what happens. Come back up to the vignette. Notice it says vignette selection, hit play. Hey, so this will only work on a selection. So we can stop if we don't have a selection and not error out. Or if we were to play it, hit continue and we'll get the error, command feather is not currently available. So now we understand what the vignette effect is looking for, but that's not necessarily super useful because it still doesn't fix what the vignette effect is doing. We could record more in here. Now, in order to do that, all we have to do is go back to an earlier step and press record. And now we could do a Control A, And then we could do a edit. Sorry, I always do that. Select, modify, contract. And here's an issue. We'll do 20 pixels. So I'll tell it okay. And then we'll stop. So a couple of things. First, the set selection means that we would want that to have, sorry, the set selection's fine. We want the contract selection to bring up a dialog so the user could pick it. So we just check that. But now these are out of space, out of sync. We really want that up here. And so we can drag it, but wouldn't it have been nice to have recorded from the get-go, the correct place? I hate these snapshots. Let's get rid of these. Taking up all that space. Okay, oh, and get rid of those. Okay, so how do we record it from an earlier point, like right after the stop? Or before the stop? Whoops, here we go. Well, let's say, yeah, after the stop, after the stop. Hold down the control key when you press record. And now when you do something like Control A, it will happen right after the point that you started. So now it will set selection right after. Then you can go the select size, or sorry, contract. So modify contract. And then we can contract it by, say, 20%. Another thing we could do instead is go select, modify, transform selection. Now remember, we're in percentages, which means we can shrink it down, press enter, and we'll transform the selection to a certain percent. Translate just means if you've moved things over. So now I don't have to worry about having that modal. It will just always run. So now I can go up to the vignette and press play. And then it does its steps, and voila, it's done. Voila. Amazing. It did it. So let me undo all of that. And let me go ahead and get rid of these one more time. I'm going to get rid of, we don't need the stop now anymore. Get rid of that entirely. But there's another way to do this. If we had the vignette selected and we wanted to start recording at the top, you can go to, I believe it is record again. Let me double check this. Command feather, continue. No, we do not want to do record again because it does the record and play. I'm mixing that one up. Hold on. Right, so it's record again, just re-records the step, which means that I've just damaged something. So let me reset this. Reset actions, and okay, all right. So back to the vignette. What it is, the one I was thinking of is just on the fly out. If you do start recording, it will now do it from wherever you left off, unlike the record button where you have to hold down control if you want it to do an insert. I don't know why I forgot that one. Let me go ahead and stop and Control D to deselect. Reset this one more time. Reset. Actions. Okay. All right. So what do we have left? Let's pop up in Vignette. Select Vignette. So that's the button mode, new action, new set, duplicate and delete. That's all the standard stuff. Play, start recording, record again. Overrides it. We have insert menu item. Menu item allows us to record something that you normally wouldn't have available to you. So if we had, for example, revert, then that would allow you to record that change. And so revert would then bring everything back to the way it was, which is probably not something you want, but you have that ability. So if you run across a menu item that you need to record, you have that. The insert stop we already went over. The insert conditional we have not. So insert conditional is really useful. If you bring it in, this allows you to check and see a number of different controls, such as if the document is in landscape, if it has a vector mask, if it's open at all, if there are alpha channels, all this great stuff. And if it is something, then do a specific action, else do some other action. So in other words, you can check to see if the document is landscape, or if the document is square, or if the document has layers or not, or any of those things, to kind of sniff out whether or not an action can be done. So you can record different actions if you just get stumped on a point where you go, well, if there is a background layer, I really need to unlock that background layer, otherwise I don't. So you can make an action where you unlock it, and then you can duplicate the entire action and remove that one step, and put an if, and then it will just run the different action, which is great. Very, very powerful. Even more powerful, it's actually possible to program Photoshop using, let's see, JavaScript, Visual Basic, and I went to say ActionScript. That's beyond the scope of this class. This is not a programming class, but if any of you are studying programming or know how to program, it's really useful. You can look it up online. Adobe has lots of steps on that and things to do. Okay, on how to program that. All right, so that's the conditional, insert conditional. We also have insert path, which allows you to do path insertion according to Photoshop, but that's grayed out right now because of where we are. I believe you have to be on a step where you have recorded a path, and then you can insert the path based off of it. So in other words, this path tool can be used, and then you can change it. Let me double check that though, because it's been a while since I've done that, and I'd forgotten that was even in there, so I hadn't planned on talking about it. So if we do this, and we've made a layer, let me stop it. It should be, yep, that's it. Once you have a path layer, you can insert path, and then you can set it as a work path, and you can go about it. So we're not covering this because we're not covering Illustrator, but if you do want to automate inserting things from Illustrator into Photoshop, you can absolutely do that using the insert path. You do have to start with a path option first, or it's not going to work. All right, so it's insert path, and then we have playback options. We went over that. Allow tool recording. So this is actually pretty fun. Let's make one that's a tool recording. So once again, I've reset everything, so I'll just make a new action set. And let me make a new action. And I'm going to record this. And what I'm going to do is, actually I'm going to stop it for a second, make a new document altogether. All right, take the brush tool, set the brush tool up how I want it. And you know my normal scheme, arrange, new window. That'll let me drag it down to my little Cintiq here. Okay, and so then I'll just go ahead and make a new layer. Now, watch this cool thing. We'll go ahead and tell it to allow tool recording. And now we'll press record. And we'll just do a little sloppy happy face. Notice that it has the use brush. Now, if we did not have allow tool recording, if I were to record and use the brush, we get no new brushes coming up. So that means the only way to have tools recorded and the actions with them is to use the tool recording. So what happens if we play this? Watch this. It does it again. And it will do it in the exact same place. So if we move this layer around, you can see that we can now automatically draw something again and again and again and again, which I think is pretty neat. There are times where that can be useful. So yeah, that's a fun one to do. And I close that up, Control W. Almost there. You have replace actions, which just replaces what's currently loaded in. You also have all of the actions that the software engineers produced. It's really fun to look at things and see how they did it, like the text effects and all of those. And then you have the ability to close this tab or the group of tabs. So in a nutshell, that's actions.